I upload daily NBA content on this channel, so if that is something that interests you, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. Today we are going over hot takes. Yep. From King of the Fourth Quarter, Rusty should get a full arm sleeve. Now, I guess my original post did not directly ask for basketball hot takes, so I guess this one's fair. Yes, Kenny, I do believe I should have a full arm sleeve eventually. I'll get there one day. This was very random, but I figured I'd include it because it's King of the Fourth Quarter. From No Defense, who is an underrated NBA YouTuber. Indiana misses the playoffs next season. They didn't improve too much this offseason, if at all, and a bunch of teams around them in the East did, so I could see them slipping out. This one I agree with. For a bit of a spoiler from my power ranking / team preview videos, I have the Indiana Pacers as the 8th seed in the the fuck was that? Sounded like Porky Pig. In the Eastern Conference. And I could very easily see them falling out of the playoffs as well, because I could see a team like the Hornets or even the Chicago Bulls being better than them, because the Pacers, as No Defense said here, really didn't improve, and a bunch of teams in the East did, like the Hawks and the Wizards and the Nets and all of that stuff. So their spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs might have been lost just by simply remaining stagnant. Kobe White have a high ceiling than LaMelo. I'm going to assume he meant to say that Kobe White has a higher ceiling than LaMelo Ball, and no, he does not. He also doesn't have an equal ceiling to LaMelo Ball. I would say he has a considerably lower ceiling than LaMelo Ball. Kobe White, I would say his ceiling is Lou Williams, but a little bit bigger, a little bit better defensively, and a little bit better attacking the basket, which can be like a borderline all-star level player, but LaMelo Ball's ceiling is superstar. I don't think he's going to quite get there, but I definitely see LaMelo as a future all-star, like, pretty confidently. I don't see that with Kobe White, and this is further proof that the Bulls fan base completely overrates Kobe White. So there you go. People need to stop excluding injuries from conversations and discussion about how good players are. If they miss 25 games every season, it should factor in rankings. Well, yes and no. I don't think when we're talking about how good players are, we should talk about injuries, because I don't think that's fair to the talent of those players. I'm not going to drop Anthony Davis 3 spots in rankings because he misses 20 games a season. I don't believe that's fair to him. But in terms of picking players that I would want to build my team around, I do think people often leave injuries out of that conversation. It's pretty much the biggest reason why I believe the Sixers, if they were going to choose between Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, they should choose Ben Simmons because Joel Embiid has so many injury issues. If you remove injuries, I'm taking Embiid over Ben Simmons to build around, but because injuries are a thing, I'm taking Ben. But in terms of actual player rankings, I don't think it's fair to say that a player is worse because of injuries. They're just a good player that's less available, and you'll probably take someone who's less talented that is more often available in terms of who you're picking to be a guy to build around, but you're also, I wouldn't say that player is better than the player that is more talented than them just because the more talented player gets hurt more than they do. I don't think that's fair. I think Damian Lillard is pretty overrated in the playoffs. I think besides that first round against OKC and a few other rounds, he's kind of below average. This is not even really a hot take. I mean, I guess underrated and overrated is subjective, but it's basically a fact that Damian Lillard is not a good playoff performer outside of that OKC series and a couple of series where he was just about the same as he was in the regular season. For every good series he has, or just okay series, he has a good handful of series where he played poorly. And that's including in 2019, when after he got past the OKC Thunder, he struggled in round 2, and he especially struggled in round 3, or I might be flipping that around. I can't remember. I think he really struggled versus the Nuggets, if I'm remembering correctly. I swear people act like Damian Lillard did what he did against OKC in every single playoff series he's been in. I love Damian Lillard. I think he's a very ridiculously talented player, but his playoff performance, he's like hyped as like a better playoff performer than a guy like Steph Curry. And no, he's not. He's just not. I'd say now I'd consider him an above average playoff performer, but for his career, he has a whole lot of bad looks on his resume, and I feel like when people are looking at the whole scope of the player, that gets left out very often. The Hornets will make the playoffs, and the Celtics will be eliminated before the Eastern Conference Finals. Also, Jaylen Brown has a higher ceiling than Tatum. So I'm just going to address all of those. The Celtics, I don't really care. They might. I don't know. It depends on the matchup, really. The Hornets will make the playoffs. I think that's a real possibility. Jaylen Brown has a better ceiling than Jason Tatum. Are you fucking high? So just going down the list, Jason Tatum is a better shooter, a better shot creator, a better playmaker, a better ball handler, a better finisher, a better defensive player, a more versatile defensive player, probably a slightly worse athlete, bigger, I believe younger. What? No, he does not have a higher ceiling than Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown, his ceiling is probably 20% better than what he was last year. And that's a very good player and pretty much a perennial all-star because he was very close to being an all-star last season, but not better than even what Jason Tatum is right now. So that take is just ludicrous. No, he does not have a higher ceiling than Jason Tatum. Giannis should win the MVP next year, but the media won't give it to him. So for the first half of that, I mean, we don't know if Giannis should be the MVP yet because we don't know what season he's going to have. I do think he's going to have the best season of his career because I think the addition of a playmaking point guard on his team is going to make a huge difference, and it's going to allow him to play more of that off-ball role than the on-ball role that I think he's had issues with being forced to be that all the time. And I do think he's going to have a better season than even last year. But we don't know exactly what that season is going to be, so we can't say this outright. But I do think you are correct that no, he's probably not going to win a third consecutive MVP just because that's kind of insane and voter fatigue is a thing, and I really don't think the NBA is going to give Giannis these 3 consecutive MVPs, especially when, even though it should not be factored into it outside of the individual season, his playoff woes over the last 2 years are gonna skew people's view of Giannis, and they're gonna view him as just like, oh, he's just his regular season performer, and then he's much worse in the playoffs. And for that reason, they're gonna be like, is this regular season worse than what he actually, or better than what he actually is? Which I don't think that's necessarily fair, but that's how people are gonna view it. And I'm pretty sure only 2 players, or maybe it's 3. I think Bill Russell, Wilt, and Larry Bird, if I'm remembering that correctly, are the only players who have won 3 consecutive MVPs, and we haven't seen it since obviously the 80s with Larry Bird. I know Larry Bird was definitely one of them. So yeah, don't think that's happening. People are super overrating Jimmy Butler right now. He is really good, but right now he is still not better than a guy like Tatum or Embiid or even Paul George. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I could see Tatum, although I would not give him that because Jimmy Butler is clearly a better leader. I could see Joel Embiid, although I would not. Same thing there. Joel Embiid also had a significantly worse season last year than he was 2 years ago. Paul George, huh? I'm not even going to bother explaining why this is one of the worst takes that I have ever seen. Especially being, I'm going to explain it now. Never mind. Jimmy Butler just had one of the better playoff performances kind of all time, and Paul George had one of the worst playoff performances in round 1 versus the Mavericks. Hit the corner of the fucking backboard in game 7 versus the Nuggets. It was a part of that team blowing a 3-win lead. Not a leader really at all, as he made abundantly clear by the stupid shit he said throughout his entire career. No, Paul George is not better. No, Paul George is not better than Jimmy Butler. All right, I'm done with that one. Gary Trent Jr. will learn from Robert Covington and become one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league. Now, I don't know about the learning from Robert Covington thing. Robert Covington is definitely more on the defensive side than the 3-point shooting side, but I do just want to use this as a way to mention that I do believe Gary Trent Jr. has a very high ceiling, and I think he's going to be, at minimum, one of the best role players in the NBA, and I could even see it to where if his shooting goes in the direction I think it can, that he could basically be Buddy Hield with better defense. And he's not much of a defender right now, but I think he could get there. I'm just a very big believer in Gary Trent Jr., and I think he's going to be really huge for Portland this year. He really kind of broke out towards the end of the bubble, and he was doing it towards the end of last season, but then that got cut off, obviously. And then he was, I think, decent in the playoffs, if I remember correctly. He became a big part of the Portland Trailblazers rotation, and I think he's going to be a very good player from here on out. So I just want to put it out there that I am buying stock in Gary Trent Jr. before it's really even being sold. It should be common knowledge that the Warriors will miss the playoffs. All right, so this is stupid for a variety of reasons. The biggest one being they have Steph Curry now. Unless Steph Curry has a freak injury once more and we don't see him for most of the season again, No, the Warriors will definitely be making the playoffs, and I think it's very disrespectful to Steph Curry that people continuously believe that the Warriors are not going to be a playoff team unless he has all-star help. He took his team to the playoffs without having all-star help before his MVP season. So why the fuck could he not do that now? The Western Conference wasn't much less of a bloodbath. Why can I not talk today? Much less of a bloodbath than it was back then. So, or than it is now. So no, the Warriors are definitely going to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be a contender because I don't think this surrounding core is good enough without Klay Thompson. And even with Klay Thompson, I would have been a little bit iffy on picking them to be even the top 3 team in the Western Conference. But they're definitely a playoff team. Unless Steph Curry gets hurt, or unless, I guess, the rest of the Warriors roster gets hurt and James Wiseman is just the worst player in the league. And I don't expect that to happen, even though I'm a little bit low on him. So, no, the Warriors are going to make the playoffs. So that is my reaction to some of your hot takes. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, but that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.